Welcome to the Talegate Podcast with your host, Al Blanton. At Talegate, we celebrate the rich history of sports in the state of Alabama. So come with us as we relive great moments, great games, great players and coaches, and in the process, preserve memories for a lifetime. This is Al Blanton with Talegate, and we are here with Lawson Schaffer, who is a former Alabama basketball player and now serves as an associate broker at Buyers Right Insurance in Cullman. Lawson, how's it going today?
Man, Al, doing great. I appreciate you having me. I am excited about talking about sports today. It's been quite the journey after being my time at Alabama, but life is good.
It's always good to talk basketball.
Always. And there's never a bad time. I know we're right here in September, in the middle of football season, but basketball's right around the corner.
You know, I want to start out by going way back. I mean, a lot of times in interviews, I try to go in chronological order, and really, the first question I've got for you is, how did you even get started playing basketball? You ended up graduating at Cullman High School, but think about your earliest memories and kind of paint a picture for us about that.
Yeah, so grew up in a neighborhood that had a lot of kids that were all about the same age. I was the youngest and the smallest, I guess, out of the crew. So about third grade, I actually quit basketball because I never played and was not very good. By fourth grade, started playing in the neighborhood. Fifth grade, I gotten a lot better and went out and tried to play for Sacred Heart, which is the Catholic school here in Cullman. And I really, I guess, turned the corner a little bit then. By middle school, things were definitely looking up and up and over. And really, that's the story. Honestly, I have no idea how I got much better. My neighbors used to always just tell me that I would always be outside 5 a.m., 6 o'clock, whatever time it was before school, or after school. Dad would turn on the floodlight. They just hear the basketball bouncing in the driveway. So,
were there a lot of pickup games?
Oh, yeah, and it'd get physical, and, the waterworks would happen if you lost. So it was a fun neighborhood, but very competitive as well.
Yeah, now, two guys, Mike Dean and Bobby Meyer, were two of your early coaches. And,
yeah.
Tell us about your experience with both of those guys.
Yeah, so Mike Dean was the coach for many years at Cullman. Grew up playing with his son Keaton. He kind of exited as we were coming up. Bobby Meyer was really the driving force that got me to where I was from a high school standpoint. I'll never forget, I really thought I was really good. And thankfully for him, he put me in my place multiple times and humbled me. And he really worked on my shot and footwork a lot. And so by about sophomore year, I finally received my first letter from UAH. It was a handwritten note. And I kept it up in my, kind of in the little area, right above in your car. And ever since then, I feel like that was my motivation. Like, I felt like I finally was like, okay, I'm actually good at this. This can be a thing that I get to do in college. And Coach Meyer was every step of the way, supported me, helped me, went on every visit. I remember we'd get letters in from such and such school, Troy, UAB, and he'd be happier than I was to see me open it up and stuff like that. So to have a coach that wants to see you succeed as much as you do yourself, it's really a great relationship, because I would do anything for that guy, and I know he would have done the same for me.
Now, y'all played a team in Georgia. What year was that?
This was 2013. We played a school. I'm trying to remember. I want to say the school's name was Douglasville or Douglas County. And the coach was a Hall of Famer in that area. And he had this motto called shoot it, drive it, or sit the bench. And early our sophomore year, we were struggling pretty bad. And Coach Meyer told us that we're not really allowed to shoot the ball unless we're open. It needs to go to Houston and Troy, who are two traditional post players. So at the time, we're averaging probably 30, 40 points a game, and we're just squeaking by winning.
So at this point, y'all are kind of an old school philosophy.
Old school philosophy. We're playing really slow basketball. I mean, you're talking 1990s, 2000 style play. We go to Douglas, or we go up to, what is the area? It's like Dollywood.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about, towards Chattanooga. We play the team out of Georgia, and they have some studs on that team. They had a guy going to North Carolina, Brandon Marshall, but they were really, really good. And so we ended up playing them, and their motto was shoot it, drive it, sit the bench. And they're averaging like 80, 70 points a game. So we kind of played to their style. They get us by about 12 points, but we were all in the locker room, and kind of after the game, we're like, why don't we play like that more often? Like, one, it's way more fun than scoring 40 points a game, but two, it's like, hey, we actually compete better at that point. I know we lost, but like, we shouldn't even ever play with a team like that. So Coach Meyer started doing some more research, and he started really working on, what is called run and jump principles, which is what they're running. And on the same side of that was implementing, hey, we need to shoot more threes. If not threes, let's shoot twos, but let's look at three first. After one or two passes, let's get this thing rolling. And so he did a great job of, we had a guy younger than me named Seth Swab that ended up playing at UAH, was a heck of a basketball player. He's still playing professionally right now. And we had a guy move in, Bronte, who's a phenomenal basketball player. He actually leaves Cullman County an all-time point scored. So we had a lot of offensive power, and Coach Meyer just did a really good job of setting us all up for success.
I want to talk a lot about Alabama in just a minute, but I really want to talk basketball philosophy. And, your coach had the wherewithal to understand that, hey, we need to change up what we're doing. But the game of basketball has changed over the last 20 years. It's a different game. You think about the sets and the molasses-like, play of a 76 Indiana team versus the way Nate Oates plays now. We mentioned Grinnell, that was another offense back in the day. But, where do you kind of fit in on that spectrum and from your offensive philosophy, and what do you think about the way the game has changed?
I think, to me, the way that Alabama's done it now, and kind of where the analytics will tell you that threes are way better shots than mid-range shots, I think is just the beauty behind analytics. And I feel like the game of basketball is better flowed that way. Not in terms of just shooting threes instead of mid-range, but I think the speed of the game, I think it makes for definitely that, not the athletes today, but the skill of some of the players today, it really fits. And so I think we're all very fortunate because we're watching some really, really good basketball. And so, again, I'm thankful that we have Coach Nate Oates at the University of Alabama. But if you even look at what like Bruce Pearl and just the way some of these other SEC schools recruit, it's all the same stuff. 1 through 5 can potentially all shoot threes. They're looking at picking and popping instead of a pick and roll sometimes. Makes defensive philosophies change drastically. Instead of some hard hedges, you might have to, just do a complete switch 1 through 5 so you don't have these guys that can shoot threes and stretch the floor being involved as much.
You were 6A Player of the Year. What other schools were you thinking about? You ended up at Alabama.
Yes. I had the only official offer I had for Division I was Furman. And it was funny, I was telling Gabe, a guy I work with here at Byers Wright, that I kind of had my mind made up of where I wanted to go. So when Furman, even though that they'd offered me, they'd asked multiple times if I'd come visit. And I just pretty much told them, like, I'm not leaving this state. And so we took a visit to Murray State, which was fun, but again, I just was not – I knew where my heart lied. And
had you grown up an Alabama fan?
I grew up a big Auburn fan.
Okay.
Massive. Big Auburn fan. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, was going to Alabama, and she told me there's no way she was going to Auburn. And so I was like, hey, Alabama sounds a lot better. But my mind was made up upon Alabama, UAB, Auburn, all three same preferred walk-on positions. And that's really just what my mentality was. I really didn't have an interest of going to Troy. I didn't have an interest of going to South Alabama. If I was going to do the walk-on route, you might as well just try to do it from the top. So, and I was pretty ignorant. I really thought that I was good enough. I was like, I'll get a scholarship, after freshman year. Like, I'm going to prove myself. Mm-hmm. And, again, humbled to my knees. Mm-hmm. So it was what I needed. And I'm just thankful I got to be at the University of Alabama.
I want to talk Kyra Lewis and Herb Jones in just a minute, but I mean, I don't know if your everyday person understands how good a Division I basketball player in the SEC is. The difference between high school ball and playing at that level.
Mhm.
You know, I used to be a junior college coach. I wasn't a great player, wasn't really a great coach either. But I mean, there's just to get to the Division I level, you have got to be an outstanding basketball player.
Absolutely. One guy people always ask me, like, who's the best player you ever played with? And it's very easy. Colin Sexton was mentally just on a different level in terms of what his talent with work ethic mentality was. It was a combination I've never seen. And to have a front row seat to it, I tell people all the time, like, there was no defense for him. Like, it's one of those things where you almost pray he misses the shot, and that's your defense. Because no matter how close you guard him, no matter what you beat him to the spot, he's explosive enough to get up over you. He's got the IQ to, if you beat him to the spot, he's got to move to counter it. And so those guys, they're the reason why they get drafted top 10, top 15. And then you got someone like Herb, who offensively might not be as gifted, but like him and Colin going at it every day, you could see two pros just absolutely, two gladiators just going at it in a sense.
You know, and Herb is, like we said, he's not the most fundamentally sound player there is, but he's just that utility guy, kind of an AC Green type. What impresses you most about him?
I would say the thing about Herb is he really doesn't get rattled. You know, he's a defensive nightmare, which is, I feel like, rare in today's game because
6'7", long. Yeah.
And one thing about Herb too that I always try to tell people, which I know I'm not the strongest, but we used to always talk about locker room, like he's weirdly strong. He looks wiry, but when he sticks you, I mean, it gets you pretty good. And he has that long reach, and so you might do a crossover. And you know how it is. You think you're by somebody and they tip it, and you're like, where'd the ball go? Mm. He got more people with that than I've ever seen. I mean, it was every day. If Herb switched on you, you're passing the ball. You're not going up against him. But his mentality, his humbleness, his character, he's one of the, like I told you, I mean, I think he's one of the guys that he'll probably make the most amount of money than any Alabama basketball player because he is what every team wants and needs. And to have that, you know, be your identity, man, that's a strong trait.
And you mentioned his just cerebral approach to the game.
Yes. Dad was a coach. He's a coach's son. You know, you probably grew up playing basketball all the time. You can just tell that IQ is almost like you could tell he had older siblings that definitely used to pick on him.
And, you know, and Kyra Lewis is another one that, you know, you're talking about just being able to get to the basket. And I remember talking to Coach Sanderson one time, and he was just said, hey, nobody can guard Kyra Lewis. So what was your perspective on his game?
So when he came in, he's a very quiet guy. And so when he came in, he was he reclassified, and he was late even coming into the summer because of all that. So I think he didn't actually start practicing with us until July maybe. And so you miss a lot of time. I mean, I know June and July doesn't seem like a lot, but in terms of your summer workouts and your summer practices, it's a good amount of time. So he came in, you know, being a point guard, you're supposed to be typically very vocal and kind of be the guy with the personality. Well, he was quite the opposite. He was very to himself. He was still very confident in who he was. It just wasn't his personality to really speak much. And I just remember I would mess with him so much and try to get words pulled out of him. And I'd always try to help him with a system that was in play or things I knew that we needed to be doing defensively on calls and stuff. I was kind of like, obviously did not even have half his talent, but I always try to be his ears and his eyes and try to assist him because I knew how important he was to our team. And he was by far the fastest guy north to south I've ever seen. I mean, it's pro speed.
You know, you and I were talking earlier at lunch, and we were talking about just the Alabama basketball program as a whole. And if you went to school, you know, at a certain period of time, you know, you might not know how great of a history, you know, the Alabama basketball program has had. I would contend that it's the second, you know, traditionally best program in the SEC. Is that kind of lost on people? I know we've had Alabama has had a lot of success recently with Coach Oates, but is that lost on people? Do people understand how rich a tradition it is at Alabama?
I think it is. I think it's weird. It's interesting. So going to school there, you could always tell whose parents were really big Alabama basketball fans and really loved it because they had that kind of the same passion. but they just hadn't seen the success yet that we have, like Whip Sanderson, even Godfrey in some of those early 2000s. There's a lot of success on those.
Elite Eight.
Yeah. Petway and those guys, but it's like you can tell whose parents really cared about the program because their kids had all this passion. They're like, man, we just hadn't been good, and they'd never seen the Wimp Sanderson, the Roaring days, and then even the Godfrey early days, and so I think that is a little bit lost. But I think the teams today, they're bringing that fire right out of people, and I think people are really excited about Alabama basketball. I mean,
what is the most hostile venue that you went to?
Oh, Auburn by far. That was every game there was insane. They opened up the new arena, and I'll never forget. It was my junior year. It was right when Auburn was not peaking, but getting really good. We had just got that top recruiting class. It was just Colin Sexton, John Petty, and Herb and those guys. Auburn opens up the game on, I believe, a 9-0 or 11-0 run. And the three that they make before the timeout, Horace Spencer catches a pass on a fast break. He throws a behind-the-back pass, almost falling out of bounds. I'm trying to think of Brown's name. It might be Bryce.
Mm-hmm.
The number 2, the shooter that was really good for their
Bryce Brown. Yeah.
Bryce Brown.
Yep.
Cashes a 3. Coach Johnson calls a timeout. I try to run up there, and they're just like, hey, we're okay. Yeah, 11 around, we're good. Keep your head up. And I couldn't hear the words coming out of my mouth. And the look on Herb and some of those guys' faces was right. It was almost like you knew we were in trouble. You just better bite down and take the beat that was coming.
Yeah.
But
I've heard Bud Walton is a pretty hostile environment.
Sneaky.
Rupp's probably kind of like...
It's not as bad.
Yeah, sometimes at an Alabama football game, people are so nervous.
Yes.
I feel like Rupp is probably like that.
They're used to that winning, and so it's kind of Bud Walton's another sneaky one because those people love them some Razorbacks.
Yeah.
And so, and every time we go play there, it'd normally be a pretty big arena or pretty big crowd, and you are right. It's pretty loud.
What was the coolest venue you went to? I'm a big stadium arena guy. I like to kind of notice, what cool features a stadium has. I mean, I guess Rupp would probably be pretty neat, but
I wish I could say I didn't go out to Oregon, but all the guys bragged on that. I had the flu.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to think of somewhere that I was just like mind blown. Man, that's a tough one. And see, to me, the tradition and the history behind the arena is almost like we went play up in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Nets, and it was a really cool place.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a Thanksgiving tournament, so there wasn't a lot of crowd there.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much of a rich history there.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of walk into it, you don't feel anything, right?
Yeah. I like the old school, like Hoosiers type gyms, like you think about like Butler or Allen Fieldhouse in Kansas. That's the kind of the historic. I mean, I'm kind of ancient anyway, but like I love that. Wood and that smell.
It's rich tradition.
In an old gym. Yeah. What has happened to that gym?
We don't get that anymore. That's what we need. I wish Greg Byrne would do something like that at the university, which I know that's again construction costs and all that, but we would need that desperately.
We need to get an old timers game together. You and I could play. I mean, you're not quite enough. We could do it in Foster Auditorium. Is that building still standing?
It does. Yes. That's where we need to play our games.
So I want to talk for a minute about Oates. I mean, you never played for him, but you had a little bit of an experience with him, and as you were concluding your career at Alabama, and you talk about a cerebral basketball mind, and what has impressed you the most about the way he's elevated this program to another level? Yeah,
so when I first met Coach Oates, they only had a lot amount of guys, so some guys were transferring, and he asked Ryan Norris and I to practice with him, kind of leading up to we graduated. Thankfully, we jumped on that and didn't want to because the first time we did it, in 1 hour, I've never been more sick in my entire life. Like, to the point of I'm about to throw up. This practice is insane. Why are we doing this to ourselves? But thank God I did because it's created a great relationship with himself and myself. And his philosophy really changed my whole perspective on, man, the ceiling's so high on our program now. And so the only thing that kind of made me, I guess, skeptical when he first came would have been from a recruiting standpoint. His personality, not his personality, but kind of just the way that, I don't know, just when you're from the North and some other things.
Just being able to adapt in a southern,
it's a different,
right.
It's a culture thing.
It is,
right?
absolutely.
And I thought that was something Avery Johnson just completely jumped on. The coach did a great job of, hey, I'm at the University of Alabama. I'm from Louisiana. This is awesome. And I think he did a great job of that. And again, I was just skeptical if Coach Oates could do that. And man, have I been wrong, because our recruiting classes have been stellar. Our program is, to me, I don't know if we've ever been this good this consistently. And you're talking about coming off a Final Four year, and our team looks better than we ever have from a roster standpoint. There's nothing you can really knock. And he's an awesome guy. And again, I'm so fortunate that he even still will answer my calls and take my texts, because I really didn't do anything for him except practice about a month. But I know it meant a lot to him, and he's always been there for me.
Now you're kind of a legend here in this town. I mean, we go to lunch, and nobody knows who I am, and I'm kind of the persona non grata here, and you're waving at everybody and shaking hands and kissing babies and all that kind of stuff. But like, what brought you back to Cullman, and what is it about Byers Wright that is so special?
Man, I love Cullman. Cullman is everything that is just, it means the world to me, honestly. It's special. I remember being at Alabama and the amount of times that things weren't going my way and I wanted to leave and do some other things, the amount of support that I always got from people in Cullman and the care and the text, you would think I was an All-American. And that's just how special this place really is. They care about each other. They care about other people's success. They want everybody to do great. And I thank God every day that I've been born and raised in this special town, and it just continues to get better. Being at Byers Wright's no different. My wife, Riley, who reason why I went to Alabama, and Haig's daughter were roommates all through college, and I got to know the Wright family really well. And Haig had offered me a job a couple times, and when I got out of school, I took him up on an interview, and the rest is history. And he had unfortunately passed away this year, but he has poured so much time and mentored me in so many ways that he really didn't realize what he was doing, but he just was that kind of special of a person where he is always going to be the guy I aspire to be. I love him to death, and because of all that, I hope we can continue on his legacy here at Byers Wright.
Now, you're a Cullman guy, and I'm a Jasper guy. I mean, and there's been a little bit of a rivalry there through the years. Do you think you and I can develop a friendship, even though we've got such animosity between our two towns?
There's an invisible wall always.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So can we overcome that,
I think so.
divisiveness?
I love Jasper too. I mean, we unfortunately, my junior is the year the fight happened.
Yeah.
So we no longer got to play on basketball and stuff, and I was like, it's not how it should be. That's why stuff like that, when it happens and rivalries get dissolved or something, it just ruins all the fun.
Yeah. We had a little bit of an incident my senior year when we played at Cullman. We did. A buddy of mine didn't agree with a call at the end of the game and chased the referees into the locker room, and several dads had to hold him back. So anyway, that might have been what initiated all this. These histrionics across the years.
You know what it is? It's just two programs that are normally and historically pretty good, and neither one can lay a leg at each other.
That's right.
It's a good rivalry. I just hope nothing else like that ever happens again, so we can continue to build off of it.
We need to continue to play. It's
got to.
It's good.
It's the same way, us with Hartsville. And you know why there are rivalries? It's because two schools are good. Yeah. You never have a rivalry because both of you are bad.
That's right.
One's good and one's bad.
That's right.
That's not a rivalry.
No.
It's only a rivalry if both are good. So.
Well, man, I really appreciate your time, and this has been awesome. And you've done a great job of taking us inside the program and really inside your life. And we just appreciate you coming on.
Al, I appreciate the time. I love trying to tell my story. I know sometimes that I'm a bit scatterbrained and talk real fast, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time at the university, and I am so grateful for, like I said, being able to call myself a person of the Cullman community, and I'm forever grateful for it.
And that's a wrap. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Talegate Podcast. And in the meantime, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We'll see you next time.